Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast today. We're very, very lucky to have Tom Martin from Lloyds Banking Group. And Tom is the business platform lead for economic crime prevention. So a very big title there, Tom, to get out of my mouth already in the morning. And the second thing is also Tom's a non-executive director ambassador for the East of England. So Tom, great to have you on board on the podcast today.
Glad to be here.
No, thank you, Tom. So, Tom, before we get into all of our podcast guests have had 7 questions in advance. So before we dive into those today and really get a bit nosy about Tom's history and past, Tom, would you just tell our viewers a brief bit about your career history and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So the first job I remember was stacking shelves in a Morrison's in Wakefield. So I'm a northerner. I've been I was trained as an engineer, so I worked manufacturing drive shafts in Thailand. But the last 19-20 years have been working for Lloyds Banking Group in its various forms. Worked out in Switzerland doing international risk. Ran a call centre up in Glasgow, and currently fighting the good fight against the fraudsters and people committing financial crime.
Yeah. So, and it's the bit I've always fascinated, because Tom and I have worked together in the past, but how you've gone to make things happen. You like I think the job in Switzerland, you flew back from a holiday a day before to fly to Switzerland, but you made those things happen in your career. You've always been one that's always gone to get things, haven't you?
Yeah, I've definitely been pretty determined and pretty focused on what I wanted to achieve. Definitely,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Probably at the cost of a few things, but
Yeah.
but also, I'm pretty focused character.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the bit of sometimes when I speak to about people on authentic leadership, about being driven, focused, goals that they want to get somewhere and actually find a way to make it happen, if that makes sense. So if we dive into the 7 questions of today. So Tom, as you were growing up, who inspired you as a leader from your perspective?
So there's definitely a bit of family in here, and I was thinking about my dad, who I've got 6 uncles. You know me, Steve, that I'm a big football fan, but I was brought up in an environment where those kind of role models were
Yeah.
Aston Villa fans and they really loved the football. And I was obsessed by football from when I was a kid. But I think
Yeah.
that has really formed my psyche and approach to
Yeah.
life in so many ways, because
Yeah.
um, through football, and I played at a decent level. You have to work hard.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any substitute for that. You have to, cope with a bit of pressure. When you
Yeah.
play some of your like the representative games, or you play for an academy or something like that. But you also have to continually seek to improve and get
Yeah.
better and train hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit of a philosophy. Almost, I
Yeah.
know we didn't prep this, Steve, or anything, did we? But that is, I think, what I've taken to my career in many ways. And
Yeah.
if I do a bit of soul searching, which these kind of questions make you reflect on,
Yeah.
I think that has formed a lot of my approach to life. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the bit there about working hard. So
Yeah.
if I've looked at all the other kind of CEOs I've worked with, other people I've worked with, they haven't got there by luck. They've
Mm,
worked hard to get to their position and put the effort in, the longer hours.
yeah.
That's imperative. It just doesn't happen by luck, does it, Tom?
Oh, definitely not. And also, I think sometimes you can look at, success stories in inverted commas, but I tell you, I've made so many mistakes along the way, but I've learned from them,
Yeah.
and those made me stronger. And that's the same in football as well,
Yeah.
or sport. That yeah, make a lot of mistakes, and actually, I think some of the best learning are from
Yeah.
mistakes, and
Yeah.
they kind of get you fitter and stronger to face the next challenge.
Yeah, and I watched a bit last night of the England game, and then it didn't sound nice, but I can see there's a bit here. So when Harry Maguire come on, every time he got the ball, there was like cheers from the Scottish crowd, etc. He made a mistake, there was an own goal, etc. But I've got to give that guy credit. He carries on, so keeps wanting to, and he's taken a lot of flack recently, and that's the bit about him trying to learn, get better, etc., and demonstrating that kind of resilience, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Um, and resilience comes in many forms, doesn't it? There's that that element. But you also know, Steve, that my youngest daughter, she's now 4. She just started school. Her first full day of school is today, actually. But I took her in, so I'm not that bad a dad because I did take her into school.
I was going to say, please say you took her in, Tom, please.
But this is her first full day, so the first kind of 9 till 3 day, and she's had 2 open heart surgeries, and she's 4, and that taught myself and my wife a lot about resilience and what's really, really important in life and how you can deal with those kind of personal challenges at the same time you've got a lot going on at work. And I think that makes you or has made me a more human and a significantly better leader.
Yeah. And I'll be funny, I really appreciate you sharing about your daughter because I was aware of that. But actually, that kind of learning from it, what's it made it better to a more focused outcome rather than still in that past of holding on to it. You're looking at forward focus, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I remember, the moment we got told that there was something not quite right when my wife was having the kind of 20-week scan. I remember going to Great Ormond Street Hospital and being told that there's a 50-50 chance of her making it. I remember being after the first operation and seeing like your 1-year-old daughter with literally, I think it was about 8 different connections of fluids and things going into her body, and it just makes you realise what's really important, what I valued by my bosses at the time. I'll never forget the support I got, Steve, and it wasn't about following any rule book. It was, did my boss genuinely care about me? And did they do everything to shield me from any other demands at work? And they gave me the time I needed to focus on my family. And I hope that's something that my teams would say that I do as well.
And that goes into the kind of next question about that positive leadership at that time. It's not the rule book all the time, is it, Tom? You can't suddenly get a rule book on you going through kind of a very, very serious thing in your family life to go, let me have a look at the page, how do I deal with it? It's about being genuine and caring. That's imperative, isn't it? Not always having a rule book to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how would you describe if an alien landed on this planet and said, what's Tom's leadership style? How would you describe your leadership style?
So I always find this one a bit tricky, but what teams tell me and people tell me, I get feedback on quite regularly, is I'm really a values-led leader. And that I don't connect with that because I don't see it myself, but it's constant feedback I get. And what I really think that means, if I try and unpick it a bit, is keeping your word.
Yes.
Do you have good intent? Are you trying to do the right thing? And then, like you say in Lloyds Bank Group, that's being a real force for good and trying to do the right thing for not just my area, but for the bank and our customers. And am I really transparent about if it's kind of bad news or kind of decisions people don't want to make, but can they understand the rationale and why we're doing it? And I think some people just there's probably a unarticulate way of describing it, but I won't use. But it's just don't be an idiot. And it comes down to very human characteristics that I think are really important.
And it's really, really I like the bit there, and don't be an idiot. And it is about being a human. People say about softer skills, etc., but it's treating people with dignity, respect, and in your role as well. And I know in my role in the past, we've had to make some tough decisions, but as long as you try to do it with respect and that people can see that you're trying to do it genuinely, people will always go with you. They may not like it at the time, but they'll go, actually, I really like that person because I respect them, rather than being my best friend and softening it, etc., if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. I think it's really, really important because I think as a leader, if we're doing a new business area, and you can give a direction. Basically, anybody can use the latest management buzz phrases and say, in my world, it could be about modernization, automation, AI. You could say all that things. Whereas you could use all those buzzwords, but not actually say something that people can really understand and connect with. And I think people ultimately judge you by actions, not just your words.
Correct.
And I think the first impression when you're running a new part of the business or leading
Yeah.
people, people are really looking at you, not as necessarily the kind of strategic direction you're taking the business, but
Yeah.
do I trust this person? Have they got
Yes.
good intent? Are they going to
Yeah.
help us, help them, and
Yeah.
help us be a good team?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I've realised that the first thing you need to do when you're kind of working with a team before you've earned that trust, because I think it just
Yeah.
has to be earned, is can have you earned that right to connect on a human level?
Yeah. And I really love that, Tom, because that's the bit for me, which is the power about the human level. You can talk about AI, we can talk about
Yeah.
chat GT, we can talk about loads of stuff, but how do you connect it to the real world is imperative.
Yeah.
And human beings are like human beings. That's a natural. We've seen that with the pandemic where people have missed that human interaction. And I really love that about being genuine, because then people
Mhm.
connect with you and can see where you're trying to go. What would you say? So you've worked with a lot of leaders over the years and that. What would you say have been the key traits you've liked off other leaders? So what have you said? Oh, I like that trait of that leader. Or I've learned from that. What would you say the key traits you've learned over the years?
Yeah. So the thing I always remember is a few years ago, about 8 years ago, I think it was, I started doing an MBA,
Yeah,
and there was a professor on leadership, and that was really experienced, and loads of studies on it,
yeah,
and I can't, he spoke for hours. We had hours worth of lectures, but
yeah,
the thing that he said that really stood out to me was you have to get, Tom, you know, to be a leader, people have to follow you,
yeah,
and you have to kind of create real followership. And you know as you think about that, I think a leader has to be able to give people a picture of where we're going to go,
yeah,
and how we're going to change, and
yeah,
you have to be able to give a vision of the future
yeah,
that you can articulate. Um, and that has to be clear and simple, so that the team can then
yeah,
articulate quickly in their own words to their friends when they get home from work.
yeah,
Um, where are you going? What are you trying to do?
yeah,
And just to really bring this to life, I remember probably 20 years ago when I first started my career, going home and at a dinner table with some friends in my like 20s,
yeah,
um, describing to people what I'd done today at work, and basically we'd put some prices up of and fees up,
yeah,
basically penalty charges, and being really pleased because I was making X million pounds worth off the bank,
yeah,
and somebody actually, around the table said, "Oh, so I'm going to be charged more next month," and it kind of just dawned on me,
yeah,
how proud am I of that. Whereas now, um, I can talk about what we're trying to do in the battle to fight
yeah,
bad people,
yeah,
and I hope I hope that the team feel they've got a role to play and part to play in doing that,
yeah,
and I think it makes a huge difference, and that's what I
yeah,
mean about a simple, clear direction that people can describe to their family, friends, and loved ones, and
yeah,
really, and by doing that, because they can use it in their own words, because they really understand it and believe in it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think that's the bit about that connection again, Tom, that you're being your true self from work and home, about
mm,
keeping it simple, keeping it relatable. How can you articulate? And I like the way you said about family, friends, it's not just work colleagues, but you
yeah,
want them to be proud of the organisation or what they do. That's a big influence. And that's harder to do, to be positive. We can all be negative and say, "Oh, I'll put charges up," or this kind of stuff. But actually being proud and that clarity, and also keeping it simple, I think is really, really key for people to connect, isn't it?
oh, definitely. And um, at the moment in my part of the business, we've got a rocket image, because we've basically got a kind of real moonshot about where we're trying to get to,
Yeah,
and it kind of we're trying to conjure up that image of trying to be really bold and effectively kind of
yes,
go that kind of man on the moon, because we're
yeah,
just trying to do something really quite powerful. And I think the simple messages that people can articulate, and some
yeah,
people visualize, so
yes,
there's reason we're trying to create that simple direction people can
yeah,
anchor on, and
yeah,
it does work. And you go back to your point, without mentioning names, Steve, but I can remember multiple leaders that have helped to create that. I don't really like to use the word vision because it feels a bit kind of corporate-y, that, but
Yeah.
I like to think about a picture and understanding of where we want to go.
Yeah, yeah. And it's nice that fellowship of people coming with you, and then they start to articulate. You get a buzz off the back of it, going, they get it. They actually,
Yeah.
we all know where we're going, which is fantastic. And the other bit, Tom. So moving forward, you've had high pressure jobs over the years. You've got a high pressure job now, etc. How do you overcome stress, pressure? How do you keep yourself level headed? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm sat here today. It's 20 to 9. I'm in London. What I've done this morning, I got up at 4:50. I drove to my in-laws, picked them up, dropped them off. I live in Cambridge. Dropped them off at Stansted Airport and drove into work. And I was in the office for 7 o'clock. And I say that because I feel brilliant having done that. Like some people, I
Yes,
think, Tom, you're nuts doing that at
yeah,
5:30. But fundamentally, I was kind because
yes,
my in-law, they've got a place in Spain. They've worked all their lives. They've chosen
yeah,
to do that, and and they really wanted to lift, and so
yeah,
I gave them it, and um, I, um, I honestly have had the best morning. Feel really
yeah,
happy, and um, being kind, and giving your time to other people, because that's
yeah,
just one example that I've used because it's happened this morning.
yeah,
But Steve, I know you've done this a lot in the past personally as well, but I love mentoring
yeah,
people. I give a bit of my time helping to support a kids' football team
yeah,
as well, and um, I find and there's definitely, I'm not you know, uh, yeah, I haven't got like medical knowledge or anything like that, but I'm
yeah,
pretty sure there's hormones that release when
yeah,
you're kind. I just feel a different person, and there's other things I try and keep myself, fit and what have you, but I think that being kind bit
yeah,
is kind of really, really important to me. And actually, as I said, there is a little bit of kind of science behind it because I did my annual health check the other day, and
yeah,
they gave us kind of 5 signs of wellness, and the bit I hadn't realised is distinctly on there is basic. I can't remember the words, but it was giving and being kind.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so there's, and I know there's different recipes for different people,
yeah,
but if you look after people, whether it be kind of being kind to your neighbour, someone in the
yeah,
community, which I think is actually growing post-COVID.
yes,
Actually, you
yeah,
feel more
yeah,
committed. Um,
yeah,
I think again, Steve, I think probably possibly a common thread here in about
yeah,
human connection.
yeah. But it's also that bit which you said about the chemicals within that dopamine hit you'll get of doing something good and nice is a nice feeling, isn't it? It keeps you going.
Yeah.
And actually, like getting up this morning, when you first said I got up at 4:50, 4:50, I was like, wow, Tom, I thought I got up early, but that's like superhuman. But then the bit for me is that the reason behind it, and I could
Mm,
see the story. I was like, wow, that is brilliant. And that would give me a
mm,
buzz for the
yeah,
day, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So yeah, really good. And
definitely.
if you were to look back at your younger self, if you were to live your life again or your experience, what 3 tips would you give the younger Tom going into management or leadership? What 3 tips would you give?
Yeah, and again, see, I don't know what it is about this interview. You've really helped like cast me back years and years because I remember
I should be
being.
charging you for this,
I
Tom,
know, I
shouldn't
know.
I?
But being in Shaftesbury Avenue in London, and it probably was
Yeah,
definitely in my early 20s, and I was a young, exuberant,
yeah,
like driven person. I
yeah,
probably, didn't hide that, not hide it, but it probably kind of quite quickly
yeah,
visible to people, put it that way, which is a good and bad thing. I asked a question of a senior exec at the time about leadership, and he didn't say this directly. He was kind, but he basically said, uh, don't worry too much about leadership right now. Just worry
yeah.
about management and
Yes,
understand the difference between leadership and management. And
yeah,
management is keeping your team in the right, always like a task focused
yeah,
and
yeah,
looking after them on a kind of more day-to-day basis.
yes,
But leadership um, is very much all about things that you touch on, Steve, all the time. But authenticity,
Yeah,
about creating that picture of where people want to go and creating
yeah,
followers. Really kind of showing your kind of human side,
yeah,
and um, yeah, I think that distinction's super important.
yeah,
I also think, and yeah, another image that kind of really struck with me is one of Simon Sinek's
yes,
kind of images, and he told this story about Afghanistan, and one of these kind of sergeants, he had one of his kind of privates was injured, so he was being medically evacuated,
yeah,
and this before he was actually taken off in the helicopter, the sergeant sprinted off and kissed his private, on the forehead,
yeah,
and said goodbye and kind of waved him off. And the point of that story, I can't like trying to encapsulate
yeah,
the essence that if you really care about your team, like really care
yeah,
properly about their interests,
yeah,
you know, you, some people can show that in, I don't know, like hugging and all this
yeah,
kind of stuff. But if you genuinely want to look after them and help them,
yeah,
I think that can take the performance of those individuals and therefore
yes,
your team to an
yeah,
extra level.
yeah,
So I think that true care
yeah,
really matters.
yeah.
Um,
And I think that's the bit when I went, one of the tricks I learned many years ago, because my behavior was I managed in my early management career, because it's really good to talk about leadership and management, Tom, because people
mm,
always think you've got to be a leader. But no, you can start as a manager, and we need managers in the industry
yeah,
or in work, because then leaders allow them to grow and develop. But I always remember that someone said to me, Steve, you're setting people's objectives against your standards, they'll never meet them, and
yeah,
you'll always be disappointed. So actually, I did kind of a flip of let me manage their standards, but raise by 5-10%, and actually work with them as a true people about what they needed rather than what I wanted. And that was a real big moment for me in my kind of management to leadership career. It kind of transformed it because I looked after them rather than to my standards.
yeah.
Yep.
I get that completely.
Yeah,
And I think you do also. You remember leaders that took businesses in certain directions, but then you also remember people that have looked out for you and
yeah,
helped you at different stages in your career. And see if I remember, I don't want to embarrass you, but I remember you looking out for me when I in my younger years when I was this kind of
yeah,
like highly driven person that could have made a whole heap of mistakes, but you just
yeah,
need a quiet word just to say, think about that, think about your
yeah,
approach there, just be careful
yeah,
there. And that, you know, you can realize, you realize it's important at the time, but then as you look back, you realize that was actually pretty crucial and how much you appreciated it because
yeah,
you didn't have to do all those things
yeah,
for me. But I
yeah,
remember it. I remember it now, and you really value it because there's not, I probably count on two hands, people like you,
yeah.
Steve, that have done that. So it's not it's
You're
not
going to
that
make me go
common.
red, Tom.
No,
Everyone on the
but
screen say Sunny Steve.
you remember, but you
Yeah,
really remember that,
yeah,
and I think even if people don't get the thanks in the moment. Because Steve, I'm sure I don't know, I can't remember, but I'm sure I probably said thank you. But like, now I'd like to say a real thank you because you don't realise necessarily the value of that at the time,
yeah,
and the fact that you don't have to do it because it's a choice.
yeah,
Nobody owes you someone looking out for you, watching your back, or giving you a little nudge and what have you.
yeah.
Because a lot of people, I'd say 8 out of 10 people wouldn't.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Well, I really appreciate it. And that wasn't pre-planned, so I really that was
Wasn't
maybe
no.
definitely go red, Tom. And that's hard to do, definitely hard to do. So I really appreciate it. And I think going on that, there's people in our careers that you can look back and go, that was a nice human touch. Because today, this is really good about learning about you, about that human side, and actually your kind of true authenticity. So, just to kind of finish off today for yourself, Tom, what's your personal goals, personal development? What else are you working on this year for Tom?
Yeah. So there's a couple. There's kind of like a bit of a softer side where I'd say in the last month I've just personally lost about half a stone
Oh wow.
just by realizing that when I'm a bit stressed or busy, I probably too quickly go for the chocolate tin. But I
Yeah.
read this smallest thing in the world, and that you won't believe this made such a difference. That if you move like your sweet treats, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, but
Yeah.
if you move them out of kind of arm's reach, and you have to
Yeah.
really like find them,
Yeah.
or something, it can
Yeah.
make the big difference, and it has. And
Yeah.
you know, so that was just for me about how I felt about myself, and
Yeah.
I'm really kind of just like quite chuffed with myself actually
Yeah.
for doing that. But then I'm also doing uh, a qualification Prince 2 for in the transformation world, and I really
Yes.
want to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
into the like technical detail of change, so I can really
Yeah.
understand it and advocate it. So that's a little bit, you know, although technically it helps in my role, I don't need
Yeah.
it, but it's for me to get, because I like to, I know I'm at the best when I feel really confident because I deeply understand something because
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
spent
Yeah.
time on it. So
Yeah.
next week I'm not in the office at all. I've got a 9 till 5:30 training course,
Yeah.
and I feel so lucky, if honest,
Yes.
that my company will support me doing that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
lifelong. So it's that lifelong learning. I think that comes, you know, from kind of football approach right through my life.
Yeah.
I just love kind of taking myself into
Yeah.
learning. And then probably the final thing would be, you know, the kind of the point of trying to be your best despite pressures, I think, is
Yeah.
always, you know, a
Yeah.
journey. Um, so you know, even you know, so some I'm a constant work in progress in that respect. Because now I
Yeah.
sometimes can be snappy, and
Yeah.
you know, but again, as well as being kind to others, I just try to be a bit kind to myself. So it's the smallest thing in the world, but like after I dropped my in-laws off at the airport this morning, driving in, I thought, right, I'm just going to listen to the radio
Yeah.
and just kind of, I've got 45 minutes driving to London. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So just creating a little bit of space for myself just to decompress a little bit
Yeah.
before, you know,
Yeah.
the day starts. So I don't know, probably a bit, you know, I don't know that's like a great formula, Steve, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm at right now.
No. And I think the bit there, Tom, is it's about the real you, about
Mm.
what are you working on this year. So there's a nice technical part, isn't it, about your own personal development. And from that point of view, there's that bit about actually just carving some space out of time, etc., but also being your best and moving forward. Because that's the bit I try and when I work with people about. Some people say, look, I'm just happy in my job and I stay how I am, etc. But they'll get overtaken and they don't develop or learn, or even just to be current. They
Yeah,
stay as they are. Whereas actually keep moving forward. It makes you feel better. You'll achieve more and that kind of stuff. And it's not all about big achievements. It could be small wins,
yeah.
but it just keeps you going and makes you feel good, doesn't it? That's the kind of key to it.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think you're right, Steve. You know, I think we've got to realise that you know, the world is changing quite fast. And
Yeah,
yeah, even I was talking to someone about AI, which, you know, and
yeah,
deep fakes and all this kind of stuff. And you can, you know, I've got to be really on top of that, bearing in mind what job I do and fraud.
yeah,
But 6 months ago, that wasn't even on the agenda.
yes,
So,
yeah,
you know, it wasn't there.
yeah,
And now we're getting all, you know, we're really kind of understanding defence is investing to build those capabilities. You
yeah,
know, I've heard that, you know, basically, if you had, you know, something like AI in your job title in on the west coast of the states, people that just graduated, the starting salaries are $1 million. You know,
wow,
that's, you know, but
yeah,
but it just shows the scarcity of people who understand that and how the world
yes,
is changing.
yeah, yeah,
And um, you know, if there is any doubt that we've got to
yeah,
continue and invest in ourselves, and that's
yes,
not necessarily, it's not your formal qualification necessarily. It can
yes,
be you know, conversations like this and so
yeah.
many different ways. But we've got to keep moving forward and
Yes.
learning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. So can I just say a massive thank you for Tom today being on our podcast. Really, really appreciate Tom. Very open, very honest, and I loved it, Tom. It's been really great to kind of go through with you. But can I just wish you like the best for the rest of the day and also the rest of the year. But Tom, thank you ever so much for joining our podcast today. Really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you, Tom.